live or maybe later on. It is such a pleasure and honor, of course, to have you here with me today. And you and I were talking just very briefly before we started, because you were the one who introduced me to the whole concept of LinkedIn Lives. And here we are. You and I had an audacious conversation last year, didn't we? I came onto your LinkedIn Live, and then you very kindly and graciously taught me all about it. And now I have got this project to have LinkedIn Lives for the whole of 2024, every other Monday. I launched it with James Madison 2 weeks ago, and which is, he's a very dear friend of both of us. And I am so honored to have you here. For me, the whole concept and the whole intention of having these Audacious Conversations is to really bring audacity into the conversation, into the mainstream. Because as I said last time with James, my big vision, my big intention is to redefine audacity in the way that Brené Brown redefined vulnerability. And so my book, which is coming out in the summer, the Audacity Spectrum, defines audacity as care, courage, and non-conformity. And that's what I would love to explore with you for this sort of 30 minutes that we've got today. We can go anywhere we feel like. And I think for us is to be in flow. I don't have an agenda as such. That's audacious, and allowing ourselves to sort of dance together.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I just want to say hello, Laura from the US. That's very nice to see you. So I love what you just said. The audacious to not have it all prepared, because that is necessity. Because the world is constantly teaching us to go into a framework. You have to do it in a certain way. And the way we're doing it here is going the opposite way, right? It's to free flow. I love that so much. And thank you so much for inviting me here. I love the fact that you're now going into your book, going to publish your book, and we get to have these conversations now, you and me today. I love it.
Oh, but thank you. And actually, I know you're the queen of LinkedIn Lives. You've done more than I have. So I'm really grateful to have you here. And then you can, we can pilot and co-pilot together. If there is anybody else, oh, here we go. We've got a few more. So please do let us know. Bring anything you want into the chat. This is not easy because we can't see who's on the other side and however it is, but we'll acknowledge as much as we can. The 3 C's, that's right, care, courage, and non-conformity. So Rita, I just wanted which one is the one that resonates most with you out of those sort of 3 C's?
The first thing that pops up for me is non-conformity. I think a lot of people would think the others, care, courage, absolutely them as well, but non-conformity are by far the one that linger and resonates for me, and the things I have experienced in my life where I've been very highly audacious. Yeah.
So yes, I think for me, the other thing I wanted to, a part of the way I define audacity in the book is sort of 3 C's, but also there are 8 A's of audacity. One of the 8 A's is advocacy. So I define advocacy as, again, having that ability to care. So it's the caring part of audacity, to care so much about someone or about something that you will move mountains. And I wanted to honor, Alexei Navalny, because a lot of people have written, there've been quite a lot of posts. I did role model him in my book, interestingly. So when I wrote this chapter last year, he was definitely someone I was looking up to as an audacious leader who took that advocacy almost to the extreme. He paid the ultimate price, as we now know, unfortunately. But, that's extremely rare, that type of advocacy where he knew the consequences. He came back from Germany back to Russia and, ended up imprisoned again. All of his most of the lawyers actually also knew the consequences because a lot of them had been imprisoned. And so I wanted to honor that as we've got the opportunity today, the two of us having met. But you are one of the biggest advocates that I know. So I would love to, because you've been such an incredible advocate for Benjamin, and I know your story, but I would love for you to share that in the spirit of advocacy and the audacious advocate that you have been all your life.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Alina. I mean, yes, it is. I'm honored to share this as we're coming up to the 2 years since Benjamin's passing. And advocacy and being audacious, not conforming to the norm, is basically the reason why Benjamin lived 27 and a half years instead of dying when he was 7. And the driver behind it all is looking at things from a very different perspective. Coming from Norway, where we have a tendency of thinking, well, everything is looked after. You know, if there is medicine, then just wait around and we'll come to you. That is the norm. And to fight for medicine in Norway by turning your nose elsewhere, that is really the way where I didn't conform to what was. I didn't sit back. I was on a mission to save, not just save Benjamin's life, but to bring real happiness into his life. And I had the audacity to tell my own people in Norway that, you know what, Norway doesn't serve me right now. What's going to serve me is to take charge over what I can do. And what I can do is to step outside in this world and ask, who else out there in this world is faced with similar challenges, and see it as an opportunity for something, instead of saying, like I was told by the doctors, it's better to quit your job and stay at home so you don't feel guilt on the day when he dies. I did the opposite. So in that's where, you know, you're such a strong advocate that you're willing to go against the grind. And yeah, not everyone was happy in my choices on Benjamin's journey.
But I know you know the story so intimately well, but some of the listeners don't. Can you just give a little bit of a backstory? I know, Benjamin obviously was your son, but a little bit of that would be great.
Thank you for asking. Absolutely. So Benjamin was diagnosed with something called Hurler's syndrome when he was 2 years old. It's basically lack of an enzyme that makes that you die very young, so around 7 years old. It's extremely rare, very rare. And back in the days, there was absolutely no medicine. There was no treatment. It was literally to wait for him to die. So that is the diagnosis. And then what I did was to work together with other specialists in the US and in the UK to find the impossible solutions. Everything was against us, but we did find the solution. We did find medicine. There was created the enzyme replacement therapy, and Benjamin received that when he was 10 years. So that is on the medical side of Benjamin's story. It wasn't just a walk in the park after he started to receive his enzyme replacement therapy. There were many times I had to stand up against the medical world where they said, it's time to end. And I said, no, not now. And again, using the word audacity, having the audacity to seek expertise outside in the world. And where the doctors sometimes in the hospital in Stavanger said, how dare you? How dare you go out and ask and have them call us in our own hospital because of your son? So yeah, you have to be pretty bold, brave. Yeah, you're on a mission for your child.
Amazing. I mean, I've got shivers down my spine. That's such an extraordinary story because, I said he was diagnosed at 2 and then he had this, the enzyme replacement at 10. And then he went on to live for 27 years, which is incredible.
Yeah, he did. And he really was the one that reminded me of who I am and how far you can go when, one thing is advocacy, looking after one person or a group of people, but it can lead you to so much more than just the one person that you're fighting for. In my case, it's been the ability to help so many others through the same situation.
And I always think of, when think of you, and your motto is not how, it's who.
Yeah.
Because it takes a village. I always say it's not just you on your own fighting the system, it's you becoming an expert. And my story is but similar in a much more minuscule way. As my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 10, so that was 10 years ago. He's now 20, and I had to also fight the system in different ways. And it's being their voice, it's being their advocate, and not taking no for an answer when you think you can find, not conforming, going back to that sort of non-conformity bit.
Yeah, and I want to actually speak to that, because there is another example in Benjamin's story where we had a carer who was with us, and I remember 18 months into her staying with us, the doctor said, you have to make sure that she can stay in the country, because we see the impact she has on Benjamin and how he basically absorbed this medicine. And no, the government wanted to throw her out because she didn't have the skill set, according to them, to have that work permit and stay with Benjamin. So it ended up with us taking the government, the highest level of the foreign department, to court. We actually was in court for almost 4 years. And one of the key things that happened there was one of the judges said, are you claiming that there's absolutely nobody in Norway that can look after your son? Because technically speaking, we're talking about what? Changing diapers, feeding him, and like that. And that is how, when you're up against the system and you have to be so brave to speak to them directly, how they are, that it's not about changing diapers and all these things. It's about happiness, it's about safety, it's about feeling seen. It is the emotions in between. That's what really matters. And that is where you have to be brave, because it's really difficult to stand up against judges and the almighty lawyers of a government who are standing there in their Armani suits. And here we go with a human rights lawyer. And we have to fight. But to fight to use a law that is only used for foreigners, to get foreigners into Norway, because we can bring them into Norway, to change the law and say, we can use that law also for a person in Norway that needs another person from another country to come and look after them. So there's a lot of things that was happening, and advocacy, standing up there and being audacious and dare to go there. I mean, it was so worth it, but it was really hard, and so worth it.
Of course it was. Absolutely. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's a daring there. It's daring to do that, to be bold, but it's also caring. For me, that's it's almost, I can't even make a distinction, because when you care so much about that someone or something, then you will dare to do. So and I know sometimes I get really challenged on, yes, it's not about caring, we do care, or you have to care almost to not care about what not almost, you have to care so much that you don't care about what people think, which there is that fine line, in sort of Audacity, to know how much can you push the boundaries, but you will not know until you push them to the limits. And what came to mind, Rita, is in my world, there is no serendipity. Everything sort of happens for a reason. And I watched that film called, Naiad, this on Saturday, just serendipitously, and it's the same type of story. So it's a true story of Diana Naiad, who's just literally she crossed the the ocean to go from Cuba into US for, my God, I think 60 something hours. It was just an incredible story. I remember seeing the the trailer and always wanted to see that film with Jodie Foster and Annette Bening. But it's the same. So she believed so much in this mission. She didn't do it at the age of, I think, 27. It was failed. And then she did it again in her 60s. And it took her 5 attempts between the age of 60 and 64, which comes, brings me down to this other concept that I had on my mind, because I wrote about it over the weekend, a very short little post on LinkedIn, failure. You know, and she didn't see it as failure. She kept saying it almost annoyingly to the whole team. It wasn't a one person trial across the ocean. It really was the whole team around her, the coach, you know, the navigator on the boat. That story is extraordinary. If you haven't watched it, I will highly recommend that film. Yeah. And it's very audacious to reframe failure into something else, into a lesson, into a feedback.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wonder what your take on that is. And, you know, I'm sure you must have encountered how many times this concept of failure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think this is also where this non-conformity comes into play, because when you're conforming, you listen to what the majority of people are saying, and that is, it's failing, it is a mistake. And then you come, and this is where some of the biggest kind of emotional kind of riots was for me, was when people wanted to calm me down in my optimism. Where I would say, yeah, we tried this, it didn't work out, and now it has opened up to something new. And they were constantly trying to put me down, to conform to, well, when you fail, and that is a shame. And I said, and one of the biggest things that got to me, that have moved me forward, and Alina, you know this really well, basically two versions of this. When Benjamin was diagnosed, I started with asking myself, why is this happening to me? I shifted that into, why is this happening for me? Over 27 years, it moved into a much bigger question. That is what I'm leading my clients, my community with. And that is, what is this problem designed to solve or to create? And that is also, somebody said, you can't do that. You can't change all the questions and problems into that. And I say, why not?
Why not?
Why not? And that is, this conformity comes back as well, and failure, and having the audacity to look at failure through the lens of, wow, this is an opportunity. Yeah. So I think that is so powerful. And I am curious about those listening in here, what their take on those things are as well, because we're going to read the chats afterwards, even we might not have the time right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great invitation. So what we've got, so at the moment, you know, someone who's acknowledged the care, courage and non-conformity. And it's interesting, I actually can't see people's names on I don't know, you know, and, you know, Maria said, very inspirational. Rita, if you have, here we go. Thank you for sharing, Rita. Can you see the same thing that I do? You know, I had similar situation with my daughter, which is amazing. It is very admirable, for sure. For sure. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. And for me, I you know, I love, this is the one question that I love most on this planet is, why not? You know, it's like, I mean, I grew up, my son is my biggest teacher and my biggest student, because for him, he could not accept a no. And he always said, why not? You know, it's just like, why not? So I had to really learn the meaning of that one question. And I always say the same, the optimism streak. I was sort of probably born with an extra gene for optimism for me, because I do see everything as an opportunity. But sometimes life does test even that extra optimistic gene. So, you know, for me personally, and it's interesting listening to you, is this has been a very testing week as I wrote about it, you know. So I called it heart failure. My partner had a very serious heart surgery this week. My son, who's 20 now, he's sort of had the sting of the first failure, not having passed his first driving test. And I keep telling him all of his friends have passed his second, third, fourth, fifth time. But, you know, you can't minimize how that feels in the moment for someone. And I love for you is, what is this problem trying to solve?
Yeah. And I think to that point, I want to speak to that as well. To the point, it doesn't mean that we are not supposed to sit with a horrific
sure.
and acknowledge how painful it is. Because it's through that, when we are allowing it to be and simmer and feel this is painful, there is a lot of wisdom and knowledge in the pain, just like with your son as well. It's like, he has this experience. It is his 100%. And then he might see, why not just try another time? Why not go ahead? So I also want to, as much as, we're looking at it from a kind of a positive or optimistic and reframing, I would say that from my experience, that could only happen because I was willing to go into the deepest depth of the pain. How angry it made me feel. Because I believe I couldn't just have gone from this and over there and had the same results. I think you call in something in emotions and that moves you. So also, and that exactly is talk about audacity. The audacity to say, I grieve on my terms, whatever that looks like. Because that is another thing. Grieving is also a standard, almost like now it must be better. It's gone 2 years, Rita. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's not my life. And I have the audacity to believe in my life and be who I am any moment in time.
Yeah. Totally. No, thank you for that. And absolutely, it's actually acknowledging. This is another one of my 8 A's, acknowledgement. It's acknowledging that pain. It's acknowledging that it's not easy, as you said, because as my dad would say, if it were easy, Alina, everybody would do it. So it's a difference between easy and easefulness. It's we have to accept that things most of the time, can be harder than we would like them to be. And we can be angry and we can be sad. All of those are really acceptable emotions. I don't want to say good or bad. They are emotions that just need to be lived, and we name them, we tame them, and then we can refrain. For me, and we can debate how long. And again, it's a range. People can feel the emotion or the grief for how long they need to feel it. And some of us, for me, I've sort of learned to move through them a bit faster, but I can't force it on other people. And, sometimes for me personally, or the audacious thing for me is to allow for it to be longer than I would like to be. That's quite audacious, and not move fast through it on that sort of, the toxic positivity, as someone would say.
Yeah. And I feel that because in one way, the reason as to myself, when I sometimes want to go fast through something, is because I feel the risk is too high to stay in the emotion. I'm scared what's going to happen. So I want to run away from it. And through experience, I've really come to understand that daring to take that risk of sitting in the pain has opened my experience to welcome in things that I would never have seen if I weren't willing to sit in that painful space. So it can feel risky. And that's why I always think it can feel audacious to say, I'm going to go in there. It's brave, it's risky, it's bold.
Totally. I mean, risk is a big part of audacity. And risk is a big part of being audacious. And Sylvia, here you go. Sylvia is back again. I was going to acknowledge and tell, Sylvia brought risk into the last audacious conversation that I had with James, and how important it is to acknowledge that you have to be willing to take that risk. And we can all measure risk in different ways. What something feels risky for someone, it might not feel risky for someone else, and on that spectrum. But nevertheless, risk is, and there is lots of theories. You can be calculated with your risk. You can there is a part of risk which can't be calculated because there's so many unknowns, and you have to be willing to stretch yourself out of that comfort zone. It has to feel slightly uncomfortable, and then we have to also know when to come back from that, what I call the panic zone, and not allow it to go to the other extreme. But yes, emotions also show us what's very important in a conversation. That's very true, Sylvia. Thank you for reminding us of that.
There's one thing I would like to speak to. Actually, we're coming into the last 5 minutes. One thing I would like to speak to is for women. So I work predominantly with women and women on a mission to solve some of the greatest challenges we have on the planet. the invitation is for them and for women in general to be audacious leaders, because we have very often we can have a tendency of taking care of so many others, but showing up and daring to take risk faster. And like a book that I read, which is called The Audacity to be Queen by Gina DeVere, is the audacity to be ourselves, to say, I am a queen. Yeah, you might not like that, but I have the audacity to say that about me, and I want to share that and be in it. So, yeah, I wanted to just bring that one up as well.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for that, Rita. And actually, it is interesting. You work with women, primarily. I know I love the way you describe yourself. It's everybody wants to change the world, but your clients actually do, which is fantastic in that mission. And if I sort of come back to where we started with advocacy, there is this concept of the mama bear effect with, women are, I wouldn't say better, but they definitely have this capacity to advocate for other women, when other people, not just women, but that's where their power range, that behavior range really, really increases, is, audacity to be queen and make other people's queens as well. And you and I were talking before we started, because, I'm having a lot more into my conversation with my own clients, with sort of women. And I feel really passionate about women advocating for other women. And it's in the corporate world, which is my bag. This is where I spend most of my time, most of my coaching and team coaching. There is still not enough of that advocacy in my experience. And, I'd love to, that's what we do. We teach them to advocate for each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, for those knowing me, I think many will know that I'm quite, when it comes to what I do with women, I am very clear that I say, I am not here to empower you, because the word empower towards women feels very degrading for me. What I find is very important is that I have the audacity to say that I am here to remind you of how powerful you are. That is my role. And if we as women, but also men in organizations, we're leading into that to remind each and one, like, you are so powerful. And then we can help to shine light on that. Absolutely. Be allies. Absolutely. That's important in the work that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I love it. And actually, because Sylvia is in the room and I can see her there, and I love her, she's, advocating, she's a big supporter. But, one of our program, which is, in Artemis, this is a big module that we talk about, the power, as to how and Sylvia is great. That's her zone of genius of redefining power in a way. But it's really using the power in a new, audacious way, not the old, antiquated definition of power. And we started with Navalny, it's really challenging that antiquated power definition that we're seeing so still very prevalent in some parts of the world, in some parts of the corporate world, and in many different ways. So absolutely it's you and I on a mission with everybody else around us, with the whole village.
Yeah. And I want to say, I see Pat is here. I have a few of the, and Maria Flauda, which is also part of Lean, Equity and Sustainability. That is an organization also that I've co-founded, and they are amazing leaders. And so thank you for showing up on this call. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. So I'm sort of where we are more or less at the end. We sort of got one. So is there anything, Rita, anything that you would want to, or, what else, what's an audacious request that you would like to make of the world, or whoever is watching us?
Yeah, my audacious request is, if you hear any women around you talking about feeling a bit restless because more needs to be done, or that they are on big missions and they could do with some thought partnership, I would love to be connected with them. I would love for you to think about it. And maybe it's you, whoever is listening here, that is that woman who feels restless because there's more to do and you're on the mission. I would love to have a conversation with you or somebody you know. And yeah, that is my audacious request.
Fabulous. Well, yes, please. That's a lovely invitation. And from my side, I have committed to this project of having this audacious conversation with people that I love and who inspire me for the rest of 2024. And we've got an Audacious Leaders Retreat. We did in May. It's an annual one. So if anyone wants to talk about that, would love to have anybody reach out to the team as such. But for now, I am loving you. Thank you so much for being here with me, Rita, and for everybody else who's been, audaciously joining us today or who will watch us later. And thank you. We'll continue the conversation privately.
For sure. Thank you, Alina. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And Marina and everybody else who's there. Thank you very much for being here with us. Thank you.